Okay, we've got a live one. This week, the YouTuber Humane Hancock put out a video provocatively titled "Why Veganism Doesn't Actually Matter, Explained by a Vegan." In the video, Humane Hancock, whose real name is Jack, outlines three arguments. First, that veganism is not the best thing that you can do for animals. Second, that veganism matters instrumentally but not intrinsically. And third, that veganism's scope of concern is too narrow because it largely ignores wild animals. He also explains that despite this, he is still vegan. Well, this video seems to have rubbed some people up the wrong way, so I thought I'd give my 2 cents. Is Humane Hancock cooking, or is he cooked? We'll start with the most important part of the video. In his second argument, Jack draws a distinction between things that matter intrinsically and things that matter instrumentally. He argues that veganism only matters instrumentally as a means for achieving a reduction in animal suffering, which is what really matters intrinsically. I'm in the habit of saying animal suffering, but you could say the same thing for animal rights. Veganism only matters instrumentally as a means to achieve animal rights, which is what matters intrinsically. The key thing to notice here is that Jack isn't actually saying veganism doesn't matter at all. He's just saying that it only matters instrumentally and that it doesn't matter intrinsically. In other words, it only matters because it reduces animal suffering or respects animal rights. One implication here is that if veganism did not reduce animal suffering or increase animal rights to any extent, for example, if all of the world's meat was grown from animal cells, then veganism wouldn't actually matter instrumentally. And again, I think most vegans would agree with that. After all, most vegans are not just avoiding animal products because we like being fussy eaters. We're doing it specifically because we want to respect the animals or to reduce the harm to animals. So the instrumental nature of this mattering, to me, is pretty clear. I do think this is a useful distinction to make, but I don't think it's best expressed as veganism doesn't actually matter. In fact, Jack goes on to give reasons why veganism does actually matter, including reducing animal suffering and signalling to oneself and others. Again, Jack accepts that veganism does matter instrumentally. So then you might think, why bother making this distinction at all? Was this just a distinction without a real difference in order to get a clickbait title? Well, no, I don't think so. Because once you appreciate that veganism only matters because it helps animals, you can start to think, well, what else might help animals even more? Veganism is not the best thing you can do for animals. This is another spicy claim made in Jack's video, and I have to say, I think he's got this one precisely correct. Notice what he's not saying here. He's not saying that being vegan doesn't help animals compared to not being vegan. He's not saying that some other diet would be better for animals than a vegan diet. He's just saying that veganism isn't the one best thing that you can do for animals. And that is true. Again, I can see how this would land badly for some vegans. For many of us, our veganism is a really important part of our identity, and helping animals is our major motivation. But think about it. Another way of saying being vegan is not the best thing that you can do for animals is there are loads of other things that can help animals even more on top of being vegan. Put it like that, and vegans hearing this message go from defensive to curious. Well, damn, maybe veganism isn't the best thing that I can do for animals. And maybe that's actually pretty exciting news. This graph shows the number of farmed animals killed for each diet per year. There's a Google sheet linked in the video description which gives the sources for all of this. When moving from an omnivore to a flexitarian, pescatarian, vegetarian or vegan diet, the number of animals killed to feed us goes pretty steadily down. And that's good news. Clearly, being vegan entails killing fewer animals than being an omnivore. But notice something about this graph. We're only looking at negative numbers. Going from omnivore to vegetarian, for example, doesn't actually save animals, it just prevents more animals from being killed on your behalf. Being the perfect vegan is about getting closest to zero on this scale. But what about if we actually want to save animals? Well, we can convince others to change their diet too. If you convince somebody else to go vegan and take 100% of the credit, then you're saving as many animals as you are by going vegan yourself. If you convince 100 other people to go vegan, well then you've saved 100 times as many animals as you have by going vegan yourself. Importantly, this paradigm shift enables you to get to net positive animals saved, whereas traditional veganism really is about getting ever closer to zero on the negative end of this scale, often with diminishing returns on additional effort. Okay, so what about some organised activism? This is assuming 1 hour a week doing minimum wage work for an effective animal advocacy charity, and here we're looking at about 10 times as many animals saved, just with an hour a week. That's quite remarkable. That means if you do an hour a week of organised activism with an effective animal charity, you're going to have 10 times as much impact for animals as you would by being vegan alone. But it doesn't stop there. We can go one step further and look at the impact of what we've been doing in the Let's Go Vegan 2.0 series, giving 20 quid a week to effective animal charities, and in that case, in the space of a year, you'll be looking at saving 6,184 animals. So then, what if you did all three of these things? Convincing one person a year, doing an hour a week of organised activism, and giving 20 quid a week to effective animal charities. Well, if you did all of that, you would save 7,925 animals per year. The same number of animals you would spare in 54 years of being vegan. And that is the power of Vegan 2.0. So yeah, veganism, as it turns out, is not the best thing that you can do for animals. And looking at this graph, thank God it isn't. A lot of people seem to think that the disagreement here comes down to animal rights versus animal welfare, or deontology versus utilitarianism. I actually don't think that's the case. On an animal rights or deontological view, you are still going to be concerned with the number of animals having their rights violated. You'll still think it's worse to kill 2 chickens than it is to kill 1 chicken, and so in either case, we're concerned with the number of animals being affected. I think the real difference here is the focus on either excluding or reducing your own harm caused or your own violations of animal rights, versus the focus on reducing the overall amount of harm to animal, or the overall amount of violations to animals' rights. I see some vegans getting lost in this part here, losing sleep over whether they can still use a leather belt that they had before they went vegan, or whether they should try to avoid stepping on bugs. All of this is really well intentioned, but it's a terrible use of your energy if you're not doing anything productive on the other side. This is like trying to achieve the perfect levels of health by optimizing your diet by 1% more without ever having done exercise. It's like trying to build up your savings by scrimping a few pennies on your weekly grocery shop without ever trying to increase your salary. It's a stretch to say that veganism doesn't actually matter, but it's just true to say that there are things that matter a lot more if what you care about is helping animals. And that's not a criticism of veganism, it's great news for vegans. The last thing that I'll say on this topic is that it really is okay for us to disagree here. For some people, it is just intuitive that veganism should be about getting closest to zero with respect to animal rights violated or harm caused to animals. Not contributing to that is important, and therefore getting closest to zero really is what matters to them. However, for people like myself, we find it intuitive that the important thing is the overall amount of harm caused or rights violated. And in that case, veganism still matters, but Vegan 2.0 matters about 54 times more. I'm not saying that my side is right and that the other side is wrong. If somebody really does find it important to them that the thing to do is to contribute no harm or contribute no rights violations, then that's okay. Genuinely. Firstly, as vegans, we know very well that we can't actually force someone to change their beliefs. It's just a statement of fact that there will be vegans who take these two different views, and if you don't accept that that's okay, what's the alternative? It doesn't mean that we have to infight, and it does mean that both of those views can respect each other. Secondly, both sides can actually benefit from playing off each other here. Jack's video, which is ultimately about effective animal advocacy, has clocked up a lot of views precisely because it has this slightly antagonistic framing to vegans. It actually benefits him that some vegans get triggered by that title and therefore share it around and ask others to watch and react to it. Not only that, it will actually benefit his interactions with non-vegans if there is a stream of vegans who are the extreme vegans who disagree and criticize Jack. That's going to help him seem more reasonable when he's interacting with non-vegans. This is known as the radical flank effect, and it's very well established in social movements. A good radical is one who understands this dynamic and accepts that that is the role that they sometimes play. It can also benefit the other side, the vegans who really are concerned with getting closest to zero in terms of their own personal impact. It can be affirming and galvanizing to a group to understand that, okay, there is another ideology which is kind of adjacent to ours, which has some small but important differences, and I can understand those differences and understand my relationship with them and understand my own position better as a result. The only time when this divide actually becomes destructive is when we waste energy infighting that we could have otherwise spent on something more productive. And frankly, this is much more of a concern for our side than it is for traditional vegans. Vegan 2.0s might otherwise use their time and energy to do something which saves hundreds or thousands of animals. If you're only concerned with reducing your own animal exploitation, then endlessly talking about exactly why and how to do this is pretty much time optimization. If you're someone who really is concerned with getting closest to zero in terms of the number of animals you personally harm, exploit, or use, then good luck to you, and I respect it. Many of my closest friends are vegan 1.0s. But if you're somebody who's concerned with reducing the overall amount of animal suffering or exploitation beyond that which is directly caused by you, then join me and go vegan 2.0. I think Jack's onto the right thing here. What do you think? I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments. This is Chris Bryant, PhD. Cheers.